Under the glow of the pale moon, two figures stood atop a windswept cliff, gazing out over an endless expanse of midnight blue forest. The taller of the two, cloaked in a weathered fur-lined robe, had eyes as gray and as sharp as a wolf's, and hair that shimmered faintly, silver in the moonlight. Beside him stood a lupine creature, massive and loyal, its coat a gray so deep it seemed to drink in the darkness around it. The man reached down his hand, brushing the creature's rough fur. "Look at that sky, old friend," he murmured, his voice carrying a sadness that echoed between the trees. "We've come so far, haven't we?" The she-wolf, wise and silent, stared up at the man, her eyes reflecting the light of the stars. They had been together for as long as the man could remember, through lives both bright and dark. In every shade of fate, stars above had cast down upon them. Together, they had followed constellations, tracing ancient ruins carved into rock and root, searching for treasure and fighting monsters, making friends just as fast as they lost them, forever searching for a forever home. The man felt a chill run through him, though it was not from the cold. The night felt different, as though the moon herself held in her breath. He glanced at the sky, watching as the stars began to gather in new formations, their light tracing patterns that felt familiar yet distant. "Do you see it?" he whispered. "The stars, they're shifting, realigning." His gaze fell to the wolf. "Our journey is nearly at the end." The wolf lowered its head, understanding in its ancient eyes. They had chased after prophecies and adventure, and seen kingdoms rise and fall. But tonight, as the stars painted their final course, there was a sorrow between them, for both knew that their time had come. Long ago, under a different moon and sky, the man had been chosen as a guide, a watcher for those bound by destiny, a trainer of heroes. His life had been one of vigil and sacrifice, the echoes of which lingered even in his bones. And the she-wolf, who had been his companion through it all, knew all of his burdens and bore them with him in silence. All the heroes lost, yet death had yet to claim them. Their stories, and those of the heroes long gone, would stand the test of time, carved into the rocks and trees. With magical runes read the sagas of their exploits. The many they had helped would echo these tales for generations, giving renewed life to the dead. Grenji, the man, whittled a final tale onto a stone where they stood. It was a story of Melodius, a crafty wizard who met his end at the claws of a river dragon. Grenji sighed at the memory. Grenji looked at the wolf he called Mara. "You stood by me when others fled, loyal even when the weight of fate crushed those we loved." His fingers tracing the edges of the stone. "How many times did I promise this would be our last journey, and yet here we are." The wolf looked at him with quiet acceptance, its gaze a mixture of pride and sorrow. This was the cost of loyalty. Though they stuck together through thick and thin, they never got what they wanted, only following the tides and stars and training the next generation, only to see them smashed and written on so many stones that they'd discovered. They had each other. Each hero, Tamara, had accepted as her cub, throwing them into danger so she could watch them grow. She'd wondered why she was able to survive her cubs to this point, and she felt her colossal strength waning as the stars burned. Renji knelt beside Tamara, meeting her eyes as he had so many times before. "This is where we die, isn't it?" Tamara whined softly, a sound that held every unspoken memory between them. And as the moonlight cascaded down, the man saw his own reflection in her eyes, a reflection of who he once was, and who he had become through their journeys together. He pressed his forehead to the wolves, breathing in the scent of wild earth and untamed forests. I will always remember you, my friend. Even when the stars grow cold and the sun fades, I will remember. My wish is that we meet in the next world, yes? Tamara's gaze shifted, focusing on something deeper in the forest below them. Shadows gathered at the edge of the clearing, shapes barely visible, yet distinct, present. Grungy understood. These were the spirits of the heroes he had once guided. They were here to guide them to the next life. They were waiting, their forms thin and shimmering under the blue light, their eyes locked on him, waiting for the moon's subtle signal to embrace their mentors. Grungy's heart grew heavy, the weight of old guilt clawing up from his past. He turned back to Tamara, his voice catching in his throat. I tried to save them. I thought we could protect them, train them. But all we did was mark their time. Tamara held his gaze, a quiet understanding passing between them. They had come far, but not without sacrifices, and there were some ghosts that could never be laid to rest. Is this how it ends? Grungy asked the moon, his words barely a whisper, alone, with nothing but the shadows of those I failed. Tamara lifted her muzzle and howled, crying for her lost cubs and the regret of their untimely end. The sound was both mournful and defiant, reflecting Grungy's in every aspect. In that moment, the stars above seemed to shift again, the constellations reshaping into symbols of hope, of remembrance, of peace. The ghosts wavered, their shapes blurring and fading, but persisting, closing the distance between them. It was not malice these spirits held, but a kindness they wished to bestow on their old teachers. Grungy and Tamara felt it, the intention. They shivered and shook, the last bit of defiance and life they had left had succumbed to the rest they both wanted for so long, guided into the beyond by their pupils.